they once took for granted and find nothing but stillness. That's the exact moment when they break. That's when pride turns into confusion and confusion turns into longing. You've got to understand this. Your power isn't in convincing someone to stay. Your power is in showing them what it feels like when you're gone. When your silence becomes the loudest voice in the room, they will hear it. They'll feel it. And they won't be able to escape it. So stay with me until the end of this video, because what I'm about to reveal isn't something you've heard before. This is the raw, unfiltered truth about the moment they start missing you. And once you understand it, you'll never chase the wrong person again. You see, silence isn't just the absence of words. It's a force. It's energy. It's the language people don't know how to defend themselves against. When you go silent, you're not just removing your voice from her world. You're removing your presence, your vibration, your certainty. And when that disappears, everything around her starts to feel louder, emptier, colder. Because the truth is, what made your voice powerful wasn't the words you spoke, it was the consistency of your energy behind them. That's why when you stop talking, it doesn't feel like silence. It feels like a storm without warning. Most people underestimate the weight of silence. They think it's weak. But silence is never weak when it comes from strength, from clarity, from self-respect. It's when you've said everything that needed to be said, and now your absence begins to do the talking for you. That's the moment everything shifts. Because when you remove your words, you give the other person the space to finally hear their own thoughts. And if they took you for granted, that silence starts to feel like a mirror they can't escape. It reflects every time they dismissed your effort, every time they ignored your value, every time they believed you'd always be there, no matter how they treated you. In the beginning, they might not react. They might laugh, post, act like they've moved on. But silence isn't meant to hit instantly. It's meant to creep in slowly and then hit like a wave they can't control. Because when you were speaking, they didn't need to think. They didn't need to reflect. They just responded. But when you go quiet, their mind starts working overtime. Every memory, every word, every look, every small moment they dismissed suddenly becomes louder. And it's not your voice doing it anymore. It's their own guilt, their own longing, their own realization. This is why silence is powerful, because words can be denied, argued with, twisted. But silence can't be debated. It can't be controlled. It just exists, like a presence that's no longer physically there but is still felt. That's why the people who once dismissed you start to feel your absence not through their ears, but through their soul. They start to feel what they didn't appreciate when they had it. And that's the moment they start to miss you, not because you begged for their attention, but because you took it away. And there's a deep psychology behind this. Human beings don't value what's constantly available. It's a law of human behavior. We assign higher value to what we fear losing. When your voice is always there, when your energy is always reachable, they get comfortable. They start believing your presence is permanent. But the moment your voice disappears, they're forced to face the brutal reality that it isn't. And that reality is far louder than any message you could have sent. Because silence doesn't beg, silence doesn't chase, silence commands. Think about it, the conversations that echo the longest in your heart aren't the ones filled with endless arguments. They're the ones where everything suddenly went quiet. That moment when someone stopped explaining, stopped proving, stopped chasing. That's the moment your brain starts looping everything on repeat. That's the moment emotions get louder. Silence has that power. It pulls everything that's been buried underneath and brings it to the surface. It forces reflection, even in the ones who swore they wouldn't care. And this is where your strength shows. Because it takes emotional power to remain silent when your ego wants to speak. It takes respect to withdraw your energy instead of begging for someone to notice it. But when you choose silence from strength, not fear, you take control of the narrative. You let their conscience become the speaker. You make them face themselves without you trying to fix anything. And that's where the real shift happens. That's the moment your silence starts to echo louder than anything you ever said. So if you're wondering when she starts missing you, it's not the moment you text her or call her or try to convince her. It's the moment you stop. It's the moment your silence begins to speak, because silence doesn't just say, "I'm gone." It says, "You'll have to feel what you lost." And no one is ever truly prepared for that kind of silence. And if she ever took your presence lightly, that silence will be the weight she carries in every quiet night, every empty moment, every second she scrolls through her phone and sees nothing from you. Because silence doesn't chase people, it teaches them. Remember this, your silence is not a weakness. It's your power. And when it speaks, it says everything you never had to explain. Pride is a strange thing. It makes people feel untouchable in the moment, but it cracks silently when reality arrives. In the beginning, when you step back and go silent, pride will whisper to her, "Hal, come back." He always does. It convinces her that your absence is temporary, that your love is predictable, that your patience has no limit. That's why at first she acts unbothered. She smiles a little louder, scrolls a little faster, pretends that nothing in her world has shifted. But the truth is, pride is powerful only when there's noise. Pride is strong when you're still chasing. But pride starts to crumble when everything goes quiet. At first, it's subtle. She doesn't notice it happening. The silence feels strange, but manageable. But silence has a way of stripping people of their defenses. Without your energy feeding her ego, there's nothing left for pride to stand on. It begins to shake. It starts asking questions it was never prepared to answer. Why hasn't he texted? Why hasn't he called? Why isn't he fighting for me this time? And those questions are the first cracks. Because what she once believed was control wasn't control at all. It was your consistency. And when you take that away, her pride has no shield. This is where the shift begins. Slowly, what she thought was confidence turns into doubt. What she thought was strength turns into a quiet ache she can't ignore. And here's the psychological truth behind this. People often mistake your persistence for their power. They believe they're wanted because they're special, when in reality, it's because you chose them. But the moment you stop choosing, the illusion fades. And what's left is the naked reality their pride was built on your energy. She'll try to distract herself, of course. That's the first defense mechanism. She'll convince herself she doesn't care. She'll seek validation elsewhere. She'll drown the silence in noise. But pride isn't built to survive emptiness. Because when someone has gotten used to the comfort of your presence, the quiet hits differently. It's not just silence. It's a reminder. It's the reminder that you're no longer where she thought you'd always be. And here's where the pain begins to surface. Not because she's lonely, but because her ego is realizing it was never in control. Pride doesn't like losing control. That's why you'll see this strange shift in behavior. She might start checking your online status. She might replay old conversations in her head. She might revisit your pictures, not out of love at first, but out of confusion. Her pride wants to prove she doesn't need you, but her soul knows something is missing. That internal war is the sound of her pride cracking. And the more time passes, the louder the silence gets. What she once ignored begins to replay in her mind with painful clarity. Every good moment, every word, every touch, all of it becomes louder because now it's missing. Pride tries to suppress it, but it can't fight against what's real. Real energy leaves an imprint. And when that imprint is no longer present, it becomes a void that pride simply cannot fill. This is the moment when the mask starts to slip. The posts she makes aren't for herself anymore, they're for you. The laughter becomes forced. The silence at night grows heavier, because deep down she knows something shifted, not outside, but inside. That's how absence works. It doesn't destroy pride in one blow. It breaks it slowly, piece by piece, until the only thing left is the realization of what was lost. The reason this hits so hard is because pride is fragile. It looks strong, but it's built on assumptions. The assumption that you'll always be there, the assumption that your love has no limit. When those assumptions are challenged by silence, pride doesn't know what to do. It starts crumbling under its own weight. And that's when missing you isn't a choice anymore. It's a reaction. And this is your power. You didn't need to argue. You didn't need to prove. You didn't need to scream your worth. All you did was stop feeding the illusion. And in that stillness, pride met reality. That's when everything inside her shifts from, "He'll come back," to, "He's really gone." And when that realization hits, it's not just her heart that aches, it's her pride that shatters. So understand this clearly: silence isn't just about pulling away. It's about creating space for truth to reveal itself. When your voice disappears, the mask of pride starts to fall off. And when it does, what remains is the raw, undeniable truth of what your presence really meant. And that's the moment she starts missing you. Not out of ego anymore, but out of realization, out of the quiet understanding that your energy was never replaceable. Pride can play strong for a while, but silence always wins in the end. Power isn't in chasing. Power isn't in begging. Power lives in the quiet moment when you choose yourself. It's when you decide to step back. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally understand your value. Most people think strength is loud. They think it's about proving, convincing, or fighting for someone who keeps walking away. But real power is silent. It's in walking away with your dignity intact, even when your heart is screaming to stay. That kind of strength doesn't come from ego. It comes from self-respect. When you stop trying to prove your worth, something shifts. You're no longer reacting to their silence. You're creating your own. You're no longer begging for space in their world. You're giving yourself back the space they never deserved to own. And that's where the real transformation begins, not in getting them back, but in reclaiming the parts of you that got lost trying to hold them. Here's the uncomfortable truth: people respect what they can't control. The more you chase someone who's pulling away, the more power you give them. The more you try to fix what they keep breaking, the more you teach them that your love will always be available, no matter how they treat it. But the moment you stop chasing, the entire dynamic changes, because now your absence isn't about punishment, it's about power. Your silence becomes the boundary they never thought you'd have the strength to set. Psychologically, humans crave what they fear losing. It's not about games, it's about reality. When someone believes you'll always be there, they take you for granted. But when you step back with quiet strength, you interrupt their illusion. You force them to feel what they never had to feel before: the weight of your value. It's not that your worth suddenly grew, it's that your energy is no longer something they can access at will. And that's what shakes them. And here's the deeper layer most people miss. Walking away isn't just about creating impact in their mind, it's about creating healing in yours. When you stop trying to convince someone to see your worth, you finally give yourself permission to see it. You start remembering what you were before the begging, before the proving, before the pain. You rediscover your voice, your peace, your power. That's why silence is so strong. Because while they're trying to process your absence, you're busy rebuilding your presence. This is where the emotional balance flips. In the past, they were in control. Your emotions, your reactions, your steps, everything was tied to how they treated you. But now, the power is back where it belongs: with you. You no longer need their validation to feel worthy. You don't need their attention to feel alive. You stand in your silence like someone who knows exactly what they bring to the table. And trust me, that's when everything changes. At first, your silence might confuse them. They might test it. They might wait for the old version of you to break, to reach out, to explain yourself like before. But when you don't, when your silence is steady, something starts to break inside them. They realize the energy they thought they controlled isn't theirs anymore. They realize your love wasn't a guarantee. It was a privilege, and the fear of losing that privilege is far louder than anything you could ever say to them. There's also a philosophical depth to this. Love built on control isn't love, it's dependency. When you walk away from someone who keeps taking, you're not rejecting love, you're rejecting control. You're saying, my love is real, but it won't be disrespected. That statement doesn't need to be shouted. It's felt through silence, through action, through absence, and those are the things people never forget. When you walk away with grace instead of noise, you stop playing the role they assigned you. You're no longer the one waiting, explaining, hoping. You become the one they remember, the one they replay in their mind, the one they realize they should have held on to when they had the chance. Because nothing shakes a person more than realizing the person they thought would never leave finally did. And that's the essence of real strength. It's not found in screaming to be understood. It's found in choosing peace over chaos. It's found in standing still when everything inside you wants to run after them. It's found in trusting that your silence speaks a language they can't ignore forever. So understand this. Walking away isn't weakness. It's power. It's the quiet statement that says, I don't need to be chosen by someone who doesn't see my value. And in that moment, they don't just miss your presence. They feel the weight of losing someone who finally chose themselves. When you stop chasing, you stop giving them power over your worth. And when that happens, everything starts to shift. The most powerful thing about silence is that it reveals value, real value. The kind that isn't loud, the kind that doesn't need to be performed. It's the value that people only recognize when it's gone. When your presence is consistent, people stop noticing it. They assume it will always be there, like air, invisible but essential. But when that air is gone, when your energy is no longer wrapping around their life, everything starts to feel different. And it's not just different, it's unsettling. Because the truth is, people only realize how deeply they were held when you're no longer the one holding them. When you pull your energy away, something happens inside them they can't explain. It's not just missing your voice or your touch. It's the sudden silence of everything you used to bring, the stability, the attention, the soft presence that they got used to. That absence creates a vacuum. And the human brain is wired to feel that vacuum. It starts to replay your words. It replays your gestures. It replays every small thing they once overlooked. Silence forces reflection, and reflection is where regret grows. At first, they might try to fill the space with distractions, friends, parties, attention from others. But no matter how much noise they create, it can't compete with the silence you left behind. Because it wasn't just your voice they lost, it was your presence. And presence isn't easily replaced. Anyone can talk, anyone can text, anyone can show up temporarily. But your energy, the way it made them feel safe, seen, and chosen, that's not something they can duplicate. And it's exactly in this moment that they start to understand your value. It's almost paradoxical. While you were there giving, they didn't see it. But when you step back, they start to feel it in every empty space where your energy used to be. Psychologically, this happens because human beings process loss more intensely than gain. What they gain becomes background noise, what they lose becomes a spotlight. And now, without your presence, everything around them reminds them of what they took for granted. They hear your silence in their quiet moments. They feel your absence in places that used to be shared. They sense your value in the smallest details. The good morning messages, the soft check-ins, the emotional safety you gave without asking for anything in return. And this is the moment where they start to understand what they never fully appreciated. When you were there, they confused your consistency with permanence. They thought your love would always wait. But silence makes people face a harsh truth. Nothing is guaranteed, not even the people who loved them the most. And when that truth hits, it doesn't whisper, it roars inside them. It's not about them missing the idea of you. It's them finally realizing who you were to them. There's something deeply philosophical about this. Real love, real energy doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to prove itself. It just exists. But when someone loses it, they come face to face with their own blindness. They see what they couldn't see before. That's why absence is louder than presence, because absence forces awareness. Awareness forces emotion, and emotion forces truth. And here's what makes it even more powerful. Your silence isn't about manipulating them into missing you. It's not about control. It's about clarity. It's about showing, without saying a word, where your worth stands. When they realize they can't access your energy anymore, when they realize they can't just walk back into your life as if nothing happened, that's when they finally understand the weight of what they lost. And it's in that exact silence where the real shift happens. They start to remember not because they want to, but because they can't help it. They replay conversations, moments, memories. The same words they ignored are now the ones they crave to hear. The same presence they dismissed is now the one they wish they could have again. And that longing is louder than anything you could have said if you stayed. So many people waste their energy trying to explain their value to those who refuse to see it. But the truth is, value is felt in absence, not proven in presence. When you stop trying to convince them, silence becomes your greatest statement. It's not emotional withdrawal, it's self-respect. It's not revenge, it's revelation. You don't need to tell them what they lost. They will feel it, and feeling it will shake them more than your words ever could. And that's the beauty and brutality of silence. It doesn't fight. It doesn't beg. It simply steps back. And in stepping back, it lets the truth do what explanations never could. So remember this. When someone doesn't see your value while you're present, your silence will make sure they feel it in your absence. Because what's real is never forgotten. And once your energy is gone, it's never replaced the same way again. That's when they finally understand the cost of losing someone who was truly rare.